Hi, Jim. How are
Hi,
you?
Bill. I'm all over the place, like probably most folks that'll be listening in the face of this COVID crisis. It's unprecedented, right? So we don't have like a lot of foundational experience to draw from in something like this, and right,
No, not in my lifetime. Maybe a day or two around 9/11, there was some kind of
oh yeah,
pull in, and I actually went to my I just
right there
I
it
got
is.
very
Up there.
emotional. I just watched your Facebook Live that you did, which I think everybody should watch if you can find it by the time this comes out. I was just so moved by it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I really was, and so I have a lot of emotion right now, and I wanted a video, even though I normally say let's not video because it's distracting, but I crave that connection of seeing another face.
Yeah.
Even though I work from home, the truth is I'm minorly impacted by my world. I
Can I
home.
ask you what was the 9/11 memory that came up?
Oh yeah, yeah. So I went to my ex-wife's house.
Hmm.
Kids, my kids were, how long ago was that? Uh,
God, 19 years ago or something.
um,
20 years ago,
yeah,
September,
so
right?
my kids were like 7 and 11 or something, little young. And, it just felt so good to just be together, even though, I mean, my ex-wife and I get along fine, but for short periods of time. And certainly in that context, it was super easy for us to get along great. And it just felt nice to just be with everybody and not be trying to do something.
Right, not to do something. We all the country like stopped, but it was just for maybe days or a week or something. And then I remember the president was saying, "Go out shopping." I have an image of so I think it must have been about 3 or 4 weeks afterwards. And one of the big things I remember was airplanes stopped,
Hmm.
and then we were driving out to Denver International Airport to pick someone up, and I saw a plane as we're getting close come like this, and I started sobbing.
Hmm.
Oh, planes are back, and I think this speaks to wonderfully brought that up, right? That there's so much about normal for all the couples out there and families, individuals listening, groups, communities, agencies, churches, synagogues, temples. Like, what's normal? What's predictable? What are we certain of right now? And how many of I'm struck by what you're talking about in that the video. Yes, if you go to, we can email it out to people if we want. Maybe we could put a link up when you post this or something, or Jim Thomas Facebook. It's about slowing down in the face of COVID. If you search it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it struck me. I thought I recorded this thing. It just these are thoughts, Bill. It hit me at like 1 in the morning on a Friday night into Saturday morning. I couldn't go to sleep, and what kept coming up was slow down, slow down.
Hmm.
In some ways, it's like the old Simon and Garfunkel song. Where it's like words were coming like, slow down, you move too fast. The COVID crisis might last. You're
Yeah.
kicking around in your stuff and
Yeah.
trying to avoid and feeling off. And so it just is an invitation to take a breath, right? This is a mighty pause. And when I breathe and go inside and you ask me how I'm doing, one of the things I have this like waves of emotion, waves of it seems like in my telehealth work I'm doing and my family, my friends, that we're the common theme seems to be, and I hope this is helpful for listeners. I hear things like everything I'm experiencing is more intense. So if I'm having a good day, it's more intense. If I have a bit of panic about what's going to happen to my career or my job or my kids graduating from college, will they get a job? These things, it's more intense. When I feel the grief and all this on so many levels, people sick or dying, or I can't I can't go. I had somebody just tell me the other day, my kid's getting their master's degree and I can't go. They're not going to have a ceremony. I won't be able to share that. You know, they just started sobbing. It was just a friend. So I'm never going to get that opportunity back.
Yeah.
We could try to do something and later, and it's not the same. It won't be with all her classmates and all that.
Yeah.
So there's so much that is impacting all of us in waves, and this invitation to slow down and grieve together a bit, share the uncertainty, distress together through our podcast, and then look for the opportunities, the creativity, the meaning that we can find in this, and what do we want to learn from this, and maybe be proactive in that instead of letting the media or somebody else tell us what the meaning is, or what's it mean to you. Take a pause. You can pause this podcast right now if you want, and just take a breath and say, what is happening inside of me right now? What does this mean to me? What am I more poignantly aware of? What grief is coming up in me? What hopes, joys, fears, and that we pause, because we're a busy, busy culture, aren't we? On to the next thing. We want to get this thing done. We want to know the economy's coming back. We want to, and boy, coronavirus has got its own timetable. We're all going to be learning. So and I'm in that. I'm
in what's that?
In that uncertainty with everybody else, and I in therapist role. I show up in one way as a husband. I'm having to stretch. My wife feels things in waves at a deeper level than me. I think maybe it's the feminine archetype. It's her personhood. And she's needed me to slow down and come be in her grief and some of her anger about how this is being handled out there in the world, and some of her uncertainty about what does this mean for us as people, for our lives. What does it mean for our plans? We were going to take a little beach trip to Mexico, and been there in years, and we were right at that. Like, we almost went. We better not go. If we'd been down there, then we would have been racing 4 days later to the airport, because they were going to close flights. And bless her wisdom when she said, you crazy optimist, we're not going to Mexico. I don't want to be gathered at the airport trying to get home. And she was right. And so I feel challenged in so many ways. And I find myself, falling back on memories of having gotten through things like 9/11, gotten through the Columbine tragedy, gotten through recessions, gotten through, changes in my career that happened for therapists, like, managed care and things, and feeling then all of a sudden I'm in a wave of resilience and creativity, and I say, hey, I think I'll do a Facebook Live, and now it's 1,400 people have listened to my Facebook Live. I thought like 40 friends would listen and politely say, well, interesting thoughts, Jim.
Yeah.
Very nice of you to post. And
happy to get 40. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And, right. We do in our Pathwork group, spiritual group, we have a monthly meeting in person in some venue, and we usually max out at about 50. And we were going to cancel it, and I said, no, we don't cancel. Let's do it over Zoom. And you get a handful of people. That's a handful of people that wouldn't have had that connection. So, like I said, we normally top out at 50. We had 70 on it. So it was spectacular. It was one of our best monthly meetings that we've ever had. So that's possible too.
There's opportunity in it. So I think I want to, and I was struck by when you asked me, how are you doing? I just got like, oh, I'm everything. It's all like I feel like a tangled up yarn or the Play-Doh, and the kids have mixed it all up. And then other times I'm actually feel so centered and creative, and there's opportunity, like you just said. But for anybody listening, to just kind of say, hey, wherever you're at, there's other people in that place right now, and don't be alone in it. Fundamentally, if you're in a really distressed place, if you deal with things like anxiety or depression, reach out and get help. There are therapists. I think in a way, public service. There are people who do telehealth. Your spiritual community probably has people you can call and talk to if you can't go to church, temple, synagogue, your Buddhist retreat, etc. I also wanted to just do a little to people who are in recovery. If you're feeling your recovery really kind of like you feel like, I'm getting white knuckle here. I'm feeling really distressed, alone, etc. The bottle is very appealing, and that crazy thing that shelter-in-place orders don't. Liquor stores are open, so we're seeing people who can't access other substances going, and drinking more. Before you relapse, call somebody. Sponsors are still around. Your friends are still around. They love you.
Yeah.
They don't want you to relapse in this. If you relapse, don't hide it. So that kind of thing, and also I want to do one more shout out is there's a lot of people dealing with stuff that are made worse by the COVID crisis, but they feel more alone in it. Like they're fighting cancer, for example, and they have to go to the hospital by themselves. And their husband has to wait in the car while they get their chemo, and their husband or wife used to sit next to them and hold their hand. There's just many layers to how we're being impacted. And there's opportunity, creativity, and what meaning do we make of this? And I love what you said about your Pathways meeting. Biggest one ever. Really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, right. Right. I mean, I'm struggling, wondering where I am about. Now you've got me thinking, because I meditate every morning, but I haven't really been meditating about this. I've been meditating as usual, if you will, on this sort of, I don't know how to say it, but the normal kinds of things that I would do. I don't feel like I feel like I'm in some level of denial or some level of at least suppressing my feelings. I know very few people that are affected. I know one person, a niece is the only person I know is affected. People I know. I mean, I may know others that I don't know of, but I work from home. My life is my wife's home more. I like that.
The bonus in it, the benefit,
yeah.
right?
She's bringing me food every 15 minutes and feeling like she has to do the dishes all the time, and which she doesn't. But
you're just glad to have her there.
I am, and yet unspeakable tragedy happening, and I'm afraid to tune into it. I think I don't listen to the news. I mean, I cannot tolerate the way, for example, our president has been handling some of the things he's been doing. Just I find so unconscionable. I can't watch it. I don't. And
well, there's something to be said for what you're saying, right? Because at one level you're sort of deciding for yourself in a very healthy way. It sounds like to me, if I can reflect it back, that the news isn't good for me right now, and I don't want to get into the internet cycle or the cable news cycle or the get lost in some argument on a social media, Facebook or something.
Okay.
And when you're meditating, maybe my reality as Bill is I'm doing in this moment, like Eckhart Tolle or someone would say, what's right now. He has that great reminder, what problem do you have in this moment right now?
Right.
And you're saying, I don't really have any. And that's okay. If you're doing relatively well with this, it's okay. I don't know that feeling bad about doing well
right.
helps anyone. The opportunity of listening to sorrow is that, one, I think it's part of life. And we are a culture that generally thinks that somehow sadness and sorrow are this, we measure our lives based on the absence of sadness and sorrow and the presence of like joy and productivity and achievement and things like that. But this life comes with pain and sadness and loss. And then if we listen to the sorrow, maybe we find some meaning in it in some place where we want to contribute from our relative comfort. If you're a person listening to this, it's safe and physically distanced and you can have groceries delivered and maybe you're a bit more introverted. So I had somebody that said to me, I'm in introvert heaven. Nobody expects me to be anywhere. I don't have to be in any big groups. Then maybe by listening to that sadness, there may be some way you want to contribute, like this podcast. I think that's what you did. You're like, Jim, we got to talk.
Yeah, there's that, and there's well, we have Joanna, I guess, to thank for actually.
Yes.
Well, I'm also really looking at how I can be of service. So, for example, we have hundreds of Pathwork teachers around the world that are not technophobes, but just not technically adept. And so I'm trying to organize some trainings, free trainings for them to use Zoom effectively, and enjoying learning about things like breakout rooms and.
There you go. So it's good for us to have things to do at this time, to like acknowledge the stress we're in, and to be aware of it, and then to use this the stress and the opportunity to do something. I think what I wonder if we could just talk for a moment about, give kind of a therapist perspective from my attachment therapy lens and stuff, about what I wonder is happening to people out there that might be listening, which is when this first started to unfold in your community, and if you're in the United States, this is unfolding in waves, which is different than, say, if you're listening from Canada, a lot of the European countries, if you're listening from some of the Asian countries, New Zealand, for example, where a larger community went into a different state altogether. So there's a bit of a difference in our experience here, right? That some people are still in states where there's no shelter-in-place order, maybe not by the time you process this and post it, but whereas some people are in states that have been in a shelter-in-place order for 3 or 4 weeks. And so when you're talking to your relatives in another state or something, we're all sort of in the same soup, but you're on the edge of the soup and it hasn't boiled yet or something, and I'm in the middle of it. The experience when I was talking to a colleague in New York City and started talking about the rate of death, and it was up to it's like a tough one. Skip this part if you don't want to hear it. But she said on Saturday night, we're at one person every 5 minutes. Wow. Boom! I suddenly whoa, okay, how are you doing, Alana? How's it going? And that must be so tough. And then I think also when this first happens, we tend to either, there's panic. What does this mean for me? Because am I going to lose my business? Am I going to be laid off and furloughed? I don't know how to use these government programs. And in the United States, there's a lot more experience of, I heard they passed a bill, but what does it mean for me?
Yeah.
Versus I was talking to a Canadian colleague, and it's well, we all are just getting this benefit, and we just get it, and we don't have to go through. So that's just to recognize it. There's this global experience with micro differences. So we either have panic, or I think then there's another response of oh, this is a precious chance to spend more time with my kids, more time with my partner, more time with myself. And then, the couple, this is kind of just couples connection. Oh, look, you're home, this is great. And then I'm thinking about you and your wife, and it starts to get complicated. But down the road, it starts to get a little on my nerves that you're doing the dishes all the time. I don't really want food every 15 minutes. And your wife, maybe, I was thinking, Bill, that we would have more kind of emotional intimacy since we have all this time, but you seem really wrapped up. You've got all this stuff you're doing, and I'm kind of bored. And here comes our negative cycle or our pattern, or people have kids, and it's a real pleasure to have kids, but now I got to help with online school. And all of a sudden, I was I'm not a professional teacher. I don't know how to motivate these kids. These kids don't want to. I don't know what to do with their music lesson. I can't read notes. How do I help them practice the recorder or the clarinet when I don't have? And I have to listen to it, So it starts to get complicated. And I think then we start experiencing waves of emotion, waves of distress, waves of calm, especially for folks who don't have a meditative practice, right? It's a real blessing. You have something built in that's a wonderful gift at a time like this. You've built those muscles up. for a lot of the rest of us, it's like,
Yeah.
and then we start going towards distraction, like, and hell, it's okay. We go binge Netflix or something, Hulu, Prime, on demand or whatever. And our emotional strategy differences start to emerge, and when we're contained like this. You tend to do it this way, I tend to do it that way. And that's where I think the opportunities exist.
Oh, I so agree. One of the Pathwork lectures that I love is called The Spiritual Meaning of Crisis. And it's not about what's the meaning of the crisis itself. It's about what's your reaction to it. I mean, everything's about your reaction. Viktor Frankl, it's all about the one thing they can't take away from you is how you're going to respond. And so it's, in that sense, a phenomenal opportunity. And my wife and I have had, and we have a phenomenal relationship, but we have had more intimacy than we normally have had. And there's another choice we could have made. We could be pissed off at each other being in the way all the time. This is somehow your video went away and it's just me, which might be frightening for a lot of people.
I'm back. I'm sorry.
It's okay. What did I want to say?
More intimacy, your wife, in some ways, you said.
Yeah, and we're really called to be. So crisis, spiritual meaning of crisis is it breaks up old structures. Right? The bad behavior you might have gotten away with while you're only together an hour of the day isn't sustainable when you're together 24 hours a day type thing.
Oh man, you're hitting home. That's what happened with my wife and I, because we, I think, initially felt, a big bond, but I'm also in this therapist role, supervisor, figuring out what's happening to trainings. I'm getting requests to interview, and some of my coping strategies that aren't great for her in a relationship, like you said, I could get away with in short bursts. And she really, called to me a couple days ago and yesterday and said, I was like, oh, I'm being rather churlish, boorish in my behavior towards the most important person in my life, because she's processing things in a different way than I am. And I don't want her to be alone in that. And I don't want to be, and I want her to be able to be sad and go through her waves and have me ride her waves rather than be like a seawall. Where she hits the waves hit me and I'm like, stop, those aren't my waves. And it's been very humbling for me. And I think I want to sort of normalize that to people, that I love what you said, the spiritual, sort of emotional, psychological opportunity here is crisis. You sort of start to, what's solid in our coping and our resilience, and was like paper tiger or a house of cards.
Yeah.
And assume, if you're listening or watching, we all have, this is what, don't go shaming people because they're not going through it as solidly as you are or something, because we all have some part that this is stressing. And some part of, and an opportunity to say, what's in my shadow, looking at it that way when this comes up, or what isn't as solid and resilient and stuff as I thought it was in my relationship to myself, my partner, my family, my community. Yeah.
And what an opportunity to come together against this background of scary times. We need each other more than ever, and we need ourselves more than ever.
Right.
We need to not project out our fears on. That's not sustainable.
Well, and also to normalize, we have to share our fears. So there's subtle difference between projecting out with our fears and saying, I'm scared in this, or today I'm scared, tomorrow I might be hopeful. I'm a musical, I don't know what the next song's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be a happy song or a dirge or an angry song, and be patient with me. So I want to kind of frame what I think we're saying is there's this initial reaction to this, wherever it hit you. Maybe, it hit you sooner in say Washington, then it hit us in Colorado, later in Florida it hit you, and you have your initial reaction, which is like either, I got panicked, there's opportunity, it's okay, my job's solid, I get to work from home, it's kind of fun. I made a joke today on Facebook, I said, a side benefit of telehealth, I can come to work in my sweatpants. They're so comfy. And nobody sees my pants, right? Then the complications start to come. And were those complications for you, or the financial complications, personal, I can't go to church or synagogue or temple, I'm going to miss that. Waves of emotion, this thing, I want to normalize it. It feels like people are experiencing things more poignantly. And our emotional strategy differences start to come. And some relationships are ending as a result of this stressor. Some are getting stressed in ways that are really humbling people. And some people, like your wife and you, are able to use it to have more intimacy. So that as these complications come in and we start to tire of the stress, the uncertainty, waves of emotions, emotional, like psychological, spiritual differences might get heightened. Here's the opportunity, what you said, crisis, the old idea of crisis is danger and opportunity together. Then what do we do? The video you're referring to, a message to slow down. Mm-hmm. Take a mighty pause. Even if it's just once a day or for 5 minutes, go lean on a tree, right? Watch a sunset, see puppy videos. I saw a picture and it was this dog with the most happiest face, and there's this like a U shape of cows. It's a farm dog, and they're all trying to say hi to him, and 2 of the cows are like kissing his face, and he looks so happy, and it made me feel peaceful. Mm-hmm. And I said, Jim, pause. Feel the dog smile. They're still dogs. They don't know what's going on. Be a dog for a few minutes. Just slow down. So finding ways to slow down, connect with like nature, connect with music. I listen to classical music in the morning on National Public Radio, and the local station has been doing these little, people just calling in. And one woman said, it's very calming for me to listen to music that's been composed over some 300 years up until just the song you played yesterday that was a year old, to know that the music will stay. Yeah. The music's here to comfort us, so slowing down. And then in slowing down, what you talked about, like, I think I'm doing pretty well. I don't know if I want to go into more vulnerable spaces, but also welcoming the vulnerability that's in there if it comes up, because that vulnerability is an opportunity for us to share with each other. Yeah. And that's where I was falling short with my wife. I teach and help all these other people, and I wasn't being there for her. So I get a chance to be humbled, work my steps, try to make amends. So initial reaction, complications, waves, emotional strategy differences, psychological, spiritual differences come up. There's opportunity in that relationally, and there's danger in it. We could rigidify, we could just get into it, we could tell somebody else to deal with it this way, we could, end a relationship because we're in a panic, we could relapse and drink, we could, right? How can we slow ourselves down, open up to this experience, and share it with each other?
Find a new way to be together that is sustainable, that's exciting in its intimacy and its slowness.
Oh, that's beautiful. Exciting in its intimacy and slowness, a new way to be together. And then we can take just that one thing and layer it, I call it, like, how can I have that relationship with myself?
Yes.
Slow down, and a more intimate, sustainable relationship with myself. If you find yourself in this, like, I spent a lot of time in doubt. But I spent a lot of time, like, judging other people about how they're dealing with things. I spent a lot of time in shame. I'm really beating myself up. I should have seen this coming. I should have been more prepared. Whatever that is, you get to meet that part of yourself and say, hey, I want to have a different relationship with you, right? So then it's that in your personal relationships, your marriage or your partner or your best friend, your family? And then also, what about our communities? What about the earth? The earth is breathing right now.
Oh, yeah.
I have a friend with asthma who's told me, I haven't breathed this well in years.
Mm.
Because in her
It's not
city,
shaking
right?
also. You know, heard about that?
What is it?
That the earth is not shaking as much. Have you heard about that?
No, I can't. That's wild.
There's, you know, seismologists are able to measure things they've never been able to measure because the earth isn't shaking as much. You can imagine that.
From all of our movement, huh?
Right. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like so we get a chance to take a little gut check about things like how much I drive my car, or how much I consume, how do I show up in this world? Am I showing up in the way, now that I have this pause, the things I did do to keep myself busy or distracted or whatever, is it really the way I want to show up? You know, conscious couples counseling kind of connection, right? How do I want to show up in the world? And this is that invitation. We get to take a mighty pause and not judge our initial reaction,
Yeah.
not beat ourselves up because this is complicated and hard to process, that we have waves of emotion.
Right.
We're starting to feel which strategies work and which don't, and where do they come from? Because part of this, I mean, maybe the last thing I would say is, I think it's so essential to realize we're experiencing this as emotional beings, right? We're emotional beings like a dog or a cat or a chimpanzee or an elephant or something that don't have the intellectual capacity to be aware that the whole globe is struggling.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that is a unique, terrifying, humbling, and great opportunity all at once.
Mm.
That's why maybe you're like, I'm not listening to the news. I can't do it right now. I would just get flooded by it, and somebody else can't stop. But that it was an emotional experience at the root. Everybody's a bit scared. Everybody's a bit sad. Everybody's a bit hopeful, joyful. It's all in there. We just have these big brains that can take in so much. And there's so much information to process right now. So maybe we could be gentle with ourselves, that, you know, different people, we're all putting this experience into pre-existing beliefs about the world. That's the other thing that's fascinating to me. It's like how people's experience of COVID is so framed by how they view the world socially, politically, philosophically.
Oh. Mm.
So I want to open up to what's actually happening and learn. I'm learning a ton about epidemiology that I didn't know. And I'm fascinated by it. And I find myself wanting to hear what scientists are saying about all this and put this into a larger context. And I get excited when I hear, you know, here's the approaches they're going to take to try to find the vaccines and how they're trying to discover antiviral drugs. Other people go into, you know, it's a conspiracy, it's a hoax, it's a, like, you can pay attention to like kind of where your brain wants to take
Right.
this unprecedented thing and frame it.
From the people who brought you the Holocaust,
Right.
here comes a new conspiracy.
Yeah, right. And so anyway, I don't know where
Yeah, my neighbor, I don't know if you know, I have bladder cancer, which is in
I did not.
it's in some good state. And the treatment that I used to have to get for it is called BCG. It's a kind of bovine tuberculosis that has some kind of effect. And they're actually using BCG. So my neighbor is an 85-year-old he used to run a lab. He's like a Salmonella testing lab. And so he's like deep into this, and he's all there. And so he's saying, hey, it turns out that the BCG might actually give you an immunity. They're using BCG to treat COVID-19. So there's a side benefit for you.
So how are you doing with our conversation, man?
Good. Good. I've just a bunch of random thoughts come up that I feel like sharing. One is I was amused by one of my friends who works from home, does what you did, but mostly works from home. and now her husband's home all the time. They're definitely questioning the open floor plan.
Oh,
Because he's got a big booming voice
yeah, I
and
hear the
no
yep.
way to get away from him.
Is that HIPAA compliant, an open floor plan?
Yeah, right, exactly. And just the other thing, just if you are a doer, if you've got to be doing something, why not have a project about how to connect better with yourself? Like, come up with that kind of a project.
Yeah, or connect. Is there someone you haven't talked to in a long time and you just want to let them know? We may have drifted apart, but you had a big impact on me. I've been meditating on Fred Rogers' beautiful that he did once a day. He would stop and pause and say, I'm going to reflect on those who loved me into being.
Love me into being, that's right.
And I've been just I've called hey, they might be listening. One of my couples, like, you can't call everybody I've worked with, but I'll be meditating and thinking of a couple, and I just maybe send them an email or a phone call, and a couple have answered the phone, which is rare in this busy time. And oh, hi, and we haven't seen you in like 6 years. I said, well, I wanted you to know that you guys had a big impact on me.
Yeah.
And just having an opportunity to connect with self, with whatever we value.
Yeah.
That's where the grief can be of use.
In what sense do you mean?
Because the things we're grieving have to do with things that matter to us. And we start to realize, I feel it, I start to realize, like, the going to this, like, stopping a couple of times in the morning to this little enchanted grounds coffee shop. It's sort of on the way to work, but I have to kind of go out of the way, and I do it because I love these baristas that work there. These folks, they're in their 20s, 30s, early 40s, and they're gamers, and they have interesting stories, and I just will chat with them, and it's random, when I can chat with them, and we'll have these most interesting conversations, and I miss my interesting conversations.
Yeah.
So it tells me it means something to me.
Yeah.
I can't go like hug my son and daughter,
Yeah.
doing physical distancing, and one's out of state, and it tells me it means something to me.
Yeah.
It means that I do these therapy intensives, and they're kind of on pause right now, and I'm getting creative, and some people want to do them on Zoom, and I'm even thinking about doing them in my backyard and come in through the gate. Like, we'll pick one restroom they can use, we'll sit in the backyard 9 feet apart, we'll do therapy, But I woke up one morning just crying, and I said, why are you crying? And I said, I miss being with the people. So that maybe grief and sadness, it's a chance, this is really important to me. And when I get a chance to get back to some of those things I took for granted, maybe I'd do it a little deeper, just a little more poignant, sustainable.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by, and the joys we take. What are the joys you're feeling when you do get a good day? You get to lean against a tree, you get to take a walk because you live somewhere where you can still walk, or an old friend calls, or you have a nice chat with the neighbors from across the way, while you do your physical distancing, and you find yourself, God, I haven't talked to those neighbors in years, and what's that joy? The joy of connection, right? To listen to these emotions, they're important. We're emotional beings. We are all, first and foremost, emotional beings.
And these times remind people that we are connected and we are interdependent. And so, like, I have this loop that I walk because I work from home. I do it several times a day when the weather's nice, and I'm usually the only one I see, or I might see one or two. Now, you see everybody, people I have no idea even lived in my little loop. And everybody wants to connect. Nobody, like, there's no, like, where you wave or say hi and they don't, just pass you by. They're not going to pass you by.
Yeah, and I that's right. And I mean, one thing I've been conscious of is, like, when I do go to the grocery store, I say, thank you for being out here and putting yourself at risk so that I can come get this olive oil and these other things that I need. thank you. And thank you, my gosh, to nurses and doctors and orderlies and receptionists and the cleaning crew and everybody that are at like hospitals where no matter what they do, their chances of catching this, and they still go in and they remind me, maybe I close with this. They remind me of, I think about both of my grandfathers were coal miners.
Wow.
And I think about back before there was any like OSHA, you know, health safety masks they could wear. And I'll think about, because I read this in a history book once where this, because I never got to talk to either of them about it. They died, you know, and my step grandfather, who's my grandfather for me, but I remember he said, it's quite a thing. You love your family and you need the money. So you go down in there, but you know, there's no old coal miners. You're gonna be hacking up the black stuff soon, sooner than later, he says. And I think about the bravery of those people that are out there putting themselves on the line in these hospitals. And one of the most moving things that's helped me the last few days as a news consumer is 7 p.m., the 7 p.m. applause.
What
in
is
New York
that?
City. In Manhattan, people spontaneously, it's been spreading all over the city. At 7 p.m., they're applauding. They're leaning out their windows, they're standing on their stoop and applauding, especially near the hospitals, because that's where the shift change happens.
Yeah. Wow.
And maybe we could all just give like a standing ovation to those frontline soldiers in this war on a virus, like you said, that knows no. We're just cellular beings that wants to inhabit and replicate itself. And it doesn't give a hoot about our gender identity, our relationship orientation, our size, our skin color, our faith, or our beliefs, the things that divide us. Maybe we could all just take a chill on being so damn intently committed to our divisions. Because this virus doesn't give a crap.
Yeah.
It just doesn't care. And maybe this is an opportunity to breathe in and remember what you said. We're just all humans, man. Take a mighty pause. We'll get through this. We'll see you on the other side.
We'll get through this. One way or the other, we'll all get through this. It will get better.
And what do we want to learn from that?
Yeah.
How do we want to show up a little differently, like you said, in I like your word, sustainable way, on all levels?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that gratitude you express, and I'll express mine to you. I always feel so much more connected to myself when we speak. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much. I feel Fred Rogers say, thank you very much. It's been very nice to meet you, and I'm wondering if I could take a picture of you so that I can take it home to my wife and tell her about my time with Bill. And if my babe is listening, my honey, most important person in my life, the greatest gift, I hear you, babe. I want to ride the waves of grief with you and surf your waves, and surf also your frustration and your sadness for Mother Earth and all of that. And I hope each of us can find that in ourselves, to find a way to be more gentle with ourselves and those people around us, and use this as an opportunity to stay physically distant but emotionally connected.
Right. Beautiful. And please give your wife my love.
Oh, thanks. You likewise.
Great talking with you, Jim.
Thank you.